On this episode of Patriot Point, find out if there's still a mask mandate in Kentucky or not. Learn the results of our poll from last week on who looks like is going to be the next governor of Kentucky, and find out which government organization just gave a big smackdown to Andy Beshear. Oh yes, it's on.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello, Patriots, and welcome to another episode of Patriot Point. As always, we got a lot of information for you that you're not going to hear on the mainstream media. First of all, let's answer this question. Is there still a mask mandate in Kentucky or not? There's been a whole lot of confusion on this. A lot of people asking me to give them the information. Well, this is the way that it is. First, we saw, of course, that Governor Beshear just decreed you will strap a mask on your face if you're to go out anywhere in public. Well, the General Assembly of the state of Kentucky thought that is an abuse of power, and so they passed a law saying it is illegal for the governor to do that, and they were to lift the mask mandate. And then, of course, a few days later, Andy Beshear vetoes this law. Well, the state legislature considers it and says, no, you don't have the authority to decide how Kentuckians can breathe. We override you on this veto. And then Andy Beshear, did he decide to sit back and say, well, that is the legal process for making laws. I guess I have to go with that. No, of course he didn't. He says, I'm going to ignore the process of making laws. And he went out and found one liberal judge, a circuit court judge there in Franklin County, where the capital of Frankfort is at, named Judge Shepard. And Judge Shepard said, well, I declare that the state legislature can't pass a law to restrict the governor's power. Governor can do whatever he wants and the General Assembly be hanged. And so he's saying, well, this one circuit judge has said this law is to be ignored until it's ruled on later, and so you have to do whatever I say. Now, think about this. This circuit judge Shepard, he's only the judge in one county. We have 120 counties. Why in the world this one circuit judge thinks that he should be allowed to rule on things outside of his district is beyond me. Why he thinks he has the authority to override the entire state legislature is beyond me. But he's not the only judge who has weighed in on this. We have circuit court judges up in Boone County who have ruled the opposite way and have said, no, the plaintiffs in this case, you have to obey the law, and the law says the governor cannot mandate masks. We've had judges in Scott County do the exact same thing. And of course, it depends on who you go and who you ask if this is legal or is it not. Here in my hometown of Lexington in Fayette County, we have a restaurant by the name of Brood, and Brood took Andy Beshear to court saying, hey, what you're doing is illegal. You don't have any authority to issue these mandates to close us down, force us to have our customers wear masks, and we're not going to do it. Now, of course, the mainstream media didn't give it too much attention, but Brood won that case. And they're open today, no mask, governor can't shut them down, business as normal. And they're not the only restaurant to do that. Another restaurant up in Florence, Kentucky, by the name of Beans. Governor tried to shut them down. He says, no, we're going to stay open. We're not going to force our people to wear masks. We're going to just let people come how they want in the capacity. They fought the court case and they won too. So is there a mask mandate in Kentucky? Depends on who you ask. Eventually, this is going to make its way up to the Kentucky Supreme Court. And this is my guess on what's going to happen. The Kentucky Supreme Court will rule in a 6-1 decision that the General Assembly cannot restrict the governor's powers. And Andy Beshear can do anything he wants, and they are forbidden from passing new laws to stop him. This is why I said the only way to stop this guy is to remove him from office, but the General Assembly chose not to do that. So that's the status of the mask mandate. Depends on where you go and depends on who you ask. I personally think there's too many mandates. There are too many executive orders. That is not the way it's supposed to be. If you ask me, I think the legislative branch should be the one to make laws. Crazy idea. I know. Do you remember Schoolhouse Rock, where an idea becomes a bill, and then the bill has to go through the committee, and it goes through the House, and then it goes through the Senate, and a long process of lawmakers to become a law? Trouble is, nowadays, we just have executive orders, just decrees. Allow me to illustrate.
I'm an executive order, and I pretty much just happened. And that's it.
Wait a second, don't you have to go through Congress at some point?
Oh, that's adorable. You still think that's how government works?
Yeah, perfect illustration there. I just kind of am, just decreed so, not the way it was ever intended to do. But let me give you something else that is something that Andy Decree has just declared, but somebody fought back and just gave Andy Beshear a big smack. And that is the Commission on the Department of Fish and Wildlife. 10 months ago, one of the very first things that Andy Beshear did when he got power was to fire the commissioner for the Fish and Wildlife Commission. His name is Rich Storm, because Mr. Storm didn't like the idea that Andy Beshear was trying to rob the commission from most of its money, just almost bankrupt the thing. And Rich Storm, the commissioner, was standing in his way saying, what you're doing is wrong, it's illegal, and as the commissioner, I won't allow this to happen. Well, Andy Beshear said, well, in that case, you're fired. Well, here's the problem. The law of Kentucky specifically states that the commission will hire and fire its own commissioner, and that the governor does not have this authority. The commission has this authority. But Andy Beshear just says, I don't care what the law says. I said you're fired. Well, this week, the commission stood up and said, oh, yeah, we're hiring him back. And so allow me to illustrate what has just happened between the Commission for Fish and Wildlife and Andy Beshear. Yes, they just gave him the smackdown, like World Wrestling Federation, smackdown on him. Oh, it is on now. When he fired the commissioner, that was against the law. But let me ask you a question. What has been the repercussion to Andy Beshear for breaking the law and firing somebody he had no ability or authority to fire? This guy's been out of a job for 10 months now. Did Andy Beshear lose his job for breaking the law? Did he get a fine for breaking the law? Has there even been an official reprimand for him breaking the law? No, there's been no repercussions at all to him for breaking the law. He broke the law when he fired the commissioner for Fish and Wildlife. He broke the law when he banned church services. He broke the law when he issued his travel ban. He broke the law when he forbid there to be protests against him. He has broken the law repeatedly, and I ask the question again, what's been the repercussion to him? Now, we have some people who say, oh, well, we're just going to pass a law that says he no longer has the authority to do those things. He didn't have the authority to do them in the first place. That's why it's called breaking the law. And again, I ask the question, what has been the repercussion? There's been absolutely nothing. And until we see some of these petty dictators across America, these petty dictator governors, continue to violate our constitutional rights, and they are not seen as important enough to remove them from office, these petty dictators are going to continue to ignore the law, ignore the lawmakers, and just decree things by executive order until somebody stands up and says there are repercussions, the Constitution will be defended, the people's rights will be defended, and we are looking for people who will defend them. Well, that is some of the things going on now. Let's talk about something else that Andy Beshear has very recently done, which I believe is breaking the law, and that has to do with extortion. This week, Andy Beshear got on his hourly propaganda hour on TV, and he says he will not consider lifting the economic mandates that he has decreed in Kentucky until about 2.5 million people get the vaccine. Now, here's the problem, is that most Kentuckians who want to get it already have. And the number of new Kentuckians getting it has incredibly dropped, because there's a lot of us, me included, who are like, I don't want to get this thing. It takes 6 to 10 years to properly test a vaccine. This thing they pushed out in 6 months? No way, Jose, especially after we've read an article from the New York Times this week, and I'll link the article in the description of this video, where it talks about people across the country who've been getting some of the vaccine, have been dying from it, which is why the government has actually put an immediate halt to some of the vaccines till they can find out why people across the country are dying because of it. So make sure you read that article from the New York Times listed in this description of this video. So he's saying, listen, I am not going to consider lifting some economic sanctions until 2.5 million, about 900,000 more Kentuckians get the vaccine. Well, let's think about this. This is extortion. Let's look at what the definition of extortion is. I have the definition here, sourcedictionary.com. Extortion, using violence, threats, intimidation, or pressure from one's authority to force someone to hand over money or something else of value, or to do something they don't want to do. Well, is that not a perfect description of what Governor Beshear is doing? He's saying, I will not consider lifting some of these economic mandates unless Kentuckians do things they have demonstrated we don't want to do. This is the very definition of using extortion, using your authority to force people and intimidate or threaten them to do something they don't want to do. Something else to add to a long list of problems that we have with our current governor. Which leads us to our last subject today. Last week I did a video on who's going to be the next Kentucky governor. And thank you to all who participated. We had more than 2,000 people who watched that video. Whole lot of comments. And the results are in. And the main result, the person that people said this is who I'd support if the election was today, was Matt Bevin. That's right, the former governor. It seems that Andy Beshear won the governorship, supposedly. A lot of people like me don't think he actually won, but he supposedly won the position with only 49% of the vote, which means more than half of Kentuckians voted for somebody else. And a lot of people think Matt Bevin was robbed, just like President Trump was robbed, and they want him to run again. Well, the person who came in second place is our former lieutenant governor, Janine Hampton. And then we saw some results for Savannah Maddox, for Mike Harmon, and Ralph Alvarado. So it's going to be another full year before any of these candidates will officially announce their candidacy. As of right now, I don't know if any of those people are actually going to run for the office. We'll have to wait and see. Make sure you tune in to Patriot Point as we watch the campaign and we discuss the different positions that they have from a Christian, a constitutional, and a common sense conservative point of view. Well, that's about all the time I have for this week. If you never have before, make sure you click that little like button or subscribe button down at the bottom left of the screen. It really means a lot to the channel if you'll subscribe and like it. And until next week, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point. Stand strong and breathe free.